Colorado, I like September for Startup Week. It brings energy to our city, and most importantly, it brings all of us together to celebrate the most important things that we have, our entrepreneurs here in Colorado. I'm Eric Matisik, and on behalf of my fellow co-founders and our awesome staff and team and the entire team at the Downtown Denver Partnership, we welcome you to Denver Startup Week. We're in our 13th year. When we started this thing, I was about this tall. I didn't have a cell phone. But 13 years ago, we started when Denver wasn't the booming hub that it is today. And we envisioned a platform where entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators could connect to really fuel the city and build something for tomorrow. We believed, most importantly, in the power of place. We thought if we put people in the same room with really big ideas and a bunch of capital, that really, really good companies would come out of the bottom. And we wanted to create an ecosystem where startups that could absolutely thrive. A place where if you're in Denver, you knew that you were welcome, you knew that capital was available, and most importantly, you knew that you could follow your dreams to build the company of your choice. Over the years, we've seen this come to life in ways we could have never imagined. We've witnessed startups present their first pitches at the Denver Startup Week stage that have gone on to become multi-million-dollar businesses. We've seen connections made at happy hours turn into multi-million-dollar contracts. And we've seen fledgling companies growing. Like Brian Leach, who's speaking tomorrow afternoon, spoke at our very first Denver Startup Week when he was in a firehouse on 20th with a dream and 6 people. And today they went public in April of this year for one of our latest IPOs in downtown Denver. And so just some awesome success. But perhaps most importantly, what we've seen is Denver transform into a magnet for innovation and talent. Major companies have recognized all of the stuff we've been doing, and most importantly, have been hiring talent and people right here in Denver to build those awesome companies we're talking about. As we celebrate another Denver Startup Week, I want to thank each and every one of you. Coming together in humanity allows us to have the Startup Week that we all want. The interactions, the interchanges, the relationships are really what create the fabric in our community to build great companies, and it becomes synonymous with entrepreneurship. Being an entrepreneur is solo. Entrepreneurship is plural. And the ability for us to all work together to build something in our city that allows us to stand out across the nation and the world is why we're all here, and we couldn't be more excited. So with that, I'm going to pass this on to my co-founder, Ben Data, to talk a little about the inspiration and success.
Thanks, Eric. As you said, so much of what we do here at Startup Week is about telling the stories of the awesome things happening here in Colorado. And from our very early years, we've had some incredible ones. From the IPOs of companies like Rally Software and SendGrid to the huge success of Ping Identity, where Andre Duran founded the company here, grew it, took it public, and then took it back private again. Turned that around to great companies like Guild, led by Rachel Carlson and now Bijal Shah, who are providing education to hundreds of thousands of individuals across the workspace. As Eric's mentioned, one of our biggest wins, the largest IPO in state history, Ibotta with Brian Leach, who's always been a huge supporter, both him and his team, of everything that goes on here. And then even today, even more coming out with Engine, formerly known as Hotel Engine, and Elia Wallen raising at a $2 billion valuation. If you go back and think about what we were all doing in 2012 and 2013, stories like that wouldn't even seem possible. But it's because of all the people in this community, people like yourselves, that we're able to do that. But it's not just about the companies, right? It's about the people themselves and the connections that are made. And so one thing that I challenge everyone here to do is that as we continue to grow as a community and as we continue to grow what we're doing here in Colorado, that we maintain those connections and we maintain that give first mentality that we've always had. Because that's the way that we're able to do this and grow together. And so I want to welcome you to Denver Startup Week and hand it off to my co-founder, Tammy Dorr.
Great. I was debating as to whether or not I needed a stool back here, but I don't know, maybe you just see my head bobbing over the podium. But anyway, thanks, Ben. It's inspiring to hear all these stories of success. At Denver Startup Week, we've had a front row seat to many of those companies that were in their early stages when we launched this incredible event and experience. And today, I just want you to look around the room, like literally turn around, look around. Somebody in this room in 10 years is going to do those same things. So just while you're here this week, think about that. There are people that have come before, been inspired and made it happen, and there are people in this room that will do the same. At its core, Denver Startup Week was never an event. It's a movement, and it is a movement that is by the community, for the community. Therefore, as was referenced, It's only successful if we act and work together like a community. And that is the challenge to ensure that it's a big success again this year. As we grow and expand, we continue to adapt, evolve, change, transition what this experience looks like. And this year we've streamlined all of our programming into 4 really awesome tracks. We have Ignite, Grow, Operate, and Create. So within those, they're not just categories, they're really launch pads for all of your ideas. They're catalysts for growth, catalysts for learning. We've also introduced community events, and I have to tell you, it blew us away. We asked the community to create events, and they delivered over 175 community events. That tells you people care about entrepreneurship in Denver, right? We have 70 track sessions, and they range from international entrepreneurship, clean tech, Latinas in technology, quantum computing, that's something we weren't even saying throughout the course of the first few years of Denver Startup Week, and innovations in aerospace, workouts with founders, and a scavenger hunt. But what has remained constant for Denver Startup Week from year one, and is true this year, is what do you think it is? It's free. It's free, it's free, it's free. And when we built Denver Startup Week, our goal was to make sure we removed as many barriers as we could to becoming an entrepreneur in our community. It is free this year, so that's why it's really important when you see our sponsors out and about to take some time to thank them. It's critical that we maintain an inclusive, connected, empowered, and diverse entrepreneurial ecosystem. So really take the time to make people feel welcome and engaged throughout the week. But most importantly, dive in, engage, challenge yourself. Above all, dream big, because at Denver Startup Week, that's what we all do best.
As Tammy said, why we're able to bring this to so many people is because of all the stuff that you all do here as a community and our sponsors. So first, I want to give a shout out to everyone who is either hosting an event or speaking an event. If you're doing anything like that this week, please stand up. Let's give a big thank you for all those folks. Also want to give a thank you to our organizing committee. They put a ton of time and effort into this as well on it, so thank you to our organizing committee for everything that they do. And again, this couldn't be free without the great sponsors that we have, so a big thank you to our presenting sponsor, Amazon. And our Titan sponsors, Capital One Cafe and Downtown Denver Partnership. We also have a slew of other sponsors who help to make this possible up on the screen behind me. So again, please, when you see folks around with any of those logos, say a thank you, because they're helping to make this happen. So to that end, we are absolutely thrilled to welcome back our presenting sponsor, Amazon, who I know many startups in this room, myself included, help to build their companies on AWS and all the other great services that Amazon provides. So with that, please welcome Ian Conyers and Sky Hart.
All right, thank you all so much. I'm Ian Conyers. I have the privilege of leading community engagement here in Denver.
Hey everyone, I'm shorter than Ian. My name is Sky Hart, and I'm a solutions architect manager at Amazon Web Services.
We're so excited to have been investing in Colorado since 2010. We've invested $15 billion across the state. 20,000 Amazonians call Colorado home, with thousands of them here in Denver, specifically focused on our AWS team that are helping startups each and every day.
Yeah, and in addition to sponsoring and helping with the community, I was actually talking to a couple founders before, and I realized that a lot of people are like, what does Amazon have to do with startups? We actually have an entire division to help you build and help you on your journey. We are not just a cloud computing platform. We have access to go-to-market resources and accelerators, in addition to world-class specialists and solutions architects like my team, in addition to free credits. So who doesn't love free credits? You can actually scan the code and get started today and build your startup on us. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amazon. We couldn't do it without you. I am a proud recipient of Amazon credits, and over $200,000 of non-dilutive capital to fuel my infrastructure was a product of what they've done. And so as an entrepreneur out there, I really am thankful for all you're doing, not just for me, but obviously for our entire community with your programs. And so thank you very much. Our next entrepreneur is someone who definitely identifies as an entrepreneur, but we know him better as the CEO of Colorado. He co-founded Techstars, he co-founded Patriot Boot Camp. He started multiple companies that contributed to an incredible amount of talent resources and taxes to the state of Colorado. And he is a true entrepreneur. And following his business success, Governor Jared Polis committed himself to making sure that other Coloradans had the opportunity to follow in his footsteps and have a better Colorado today. His firsthand experience has translated into policies, which he'll talk about today, to provide support for all of us. But he's an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. And with great pleasure, I want to welcome Governor Jared Polis to the stage to be able to give some remarks.
Happy Startup Week. It is so excited to be here again. I've been at a number of Startup Weeks over the years. It's always wonderful to see the enthusiasm in the room, to know the connections that will be made between entrepreneurs and funders and mentors coming out of these exciting organizing opportunities. And thank you, Eric, for the kind introduction. Colorado is a great place to start and grow a business. Now is a great time to start a business. And of course, we're proud that Colorado has a strong ecosystem of entrepreneurs and startups, and we are known globally for this. And when, of course, we have a lead in a sector, and startups truly are a sector, it's important to double down and make it work even better. And that's exactly what we want to do in partnership with all of you. Colorado will be the first state in history to have 16 years of an entrepreneur as governor. John Hickenlooper, entrepreneur, myself. So we'll have had 16 years of an entrepreneur. We're at 14 now. There's been states that have had business people for that long, for multiple terms, but obviously different, entrepreneur and business person. And I think it really shows in the way we do business here. Colorado is home to 700,000 small businesses, 1.2 million workers, about half of our private sector workforce. And we're also doing what we can, and we look forward to doing more to really distinguish Colorado as the best state for startups. And I would add to grow startups to scale. This is that's part of the presentation. So for startups, and of course to grow startups to scale. In Colorado, we've done a number of things over the last several years to make Colorado more hospitable. We've cut the income tax 3 times. Now, I know startups don't usually pay the income tax. You have your NOL carry forwards, but someday you might when you scale. When I became governor, it was 4.63%. We cut it at the ballot box permanently to 4.5, at the ballot box permanently to 4.4, and then through legislative action on a temporary basis to 4.25, which is where it now resides. More importantly for entrepreneurs, we cut the commercial property tax. And we could give a long seminar on property taxes in Colorado, but we had a long-standing policy for a number of decades called the Gallagher Amendment that was good and protected homeowners but forced the commercial rate up. As a result, we're 48th lowest for your home property tax. Now, I know your home values went up a lot, so they might have gone up, but not as a percentage, just as a dollar amount. But we are 48th lowest, which is great as a percentage of home value. But we're like 24th for commercial property tax, kind of in the middle of the pack, and we passed a real reduction now that'll be phased in over 2 years of about 15 to 20%. Now, what matters for entrepreneurs is if any of you have leases. If you work from home, that's great, but if you have leases, you generally have triple net leases, and so you're effectively paying the property tax rate. So that means on that property tax piece, it'll actually be coming down, real down, in addition to whatever happens to the value assessment of the property, which also could go down in the commercial space. But that means real property tax savings for every office-based business, every retail business, every store, every restaurant. Very excited about that as well. And we continue to support the tech sector in a number of different ways. Obviously, a lot of great work on the workforce side, top-notch entrepreneurial programs at our colleges and community colleges, startup and business plan competition. They These things didn't exist when I was coming up as an entrepreneur. They do now, and we've seen companies grow and succeed and start at that level and eventually raise capital and succeed. We're also particularly excited about distinguishing ourselves in a number of different sectors for entrepreneurship. One is we were thrilled to have successfully competed to be a tech hub for quantum in a federal government competition. And just yesterday, I was at the groundbreaking in Arvada for our new quantum facility, which will have ample opportunities for small and entrepreneurial businesses to be able to access the infrastructure they need to be able to start quantum companies without having to raise the enormous capital to build out the infrastructure themselves. So that's the real advantage there. We have more quantum jobs per capita than any other state, I think also in absolute terms. And we're very excited to build that entrepreneurial infrastructure that will empower the next set of quantum companies and startups all the way through helping them scale and succeed. We expect to help launch over 50 new quantum startups and attract over $2 billion in funding, and that was all with the public and private partnership, School of Mines, University of Colorado, State of Colorado, and of course Tech Hubs, U.S. Department of Commerce. Another thing that we're excited about thematically that is really done well in the startup sector is employee ownership. Very much the norm in startups to have an employee stock option plan. Most of you either do or will. Not necessarily the norm across the economy and with more mature companies. So we're very excited about, first of all, multiple forms of employee participation. Stock options are the one we generally know in the startup sector, but there's also ESOPs and co-ops, formalized profit sharing. These are all different models that, as an example, when New Belgium breweries sold a couple of years ago, it wasn't, everybody who had worked there for a number of years did very well. Even people that worked there in entry-level jobs accumulated what translated into $100,000, $200,000 of equity when the company was ultimately sold. So we're very excited about wealth building in general. Of course, many Coloradans experience that in the form of home ownership, and we're taking a lot of steps to create more inventory that people can afford. The hard part about getting into home ownership in Colorado is the higher cost. We're still cheap compared to Silicon Valley and the East Coast, but average home price Denver metro area, $500,000, $600,000. We need more inventory, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 that people can get into and build equity over time. And we've removed barriers to housing and made it easier to build accessory dwelling units, multifamily, and other kinds of options. We also are excited about enabling a whole set of housing entrepreneurs in the prefab space, in the 3D printing space, and there's a lot of great action here in Colorado, of course, but we're thrilled with it wherever it is. But yes, here in Colorado, with regard to housing-related technologies, a very hot space that has positive ramifications for the entire entrepreneurship ecosystem, because we want to make sure that Colorado is an affordable place to live, especially for those early risk takers and people that might be sacrificing income to help build something of value over time. We're also excited about partnering on the workforce side, and Colorado is a workforce innovator, making sure that we are preparing people with the skills that they need to succeed in the private sector, and really bringing industry from startup through mature industry to the table in conversations with our community college systems, our workforce centers, our colleges, to better reflect what we need to accomplish to make sure that all students are ready to succeed. That's also my work as the chair of the National Governors Association. The initiative that I've launched with all 50 governors is Let's Get Ready. And what does that mean? It means, first of all, it's focused on K through 12 education, but it's let's get ready for success at the individual level, meaning, of course, students should be ready to succeed, graduating 12th grade, ready with the skill to succeed in the workforce, whether it's an entrepreneur, a certificate, whether they're going on to college, not needing remediation. But let's get ready also means let's get ready as an economy. How can we make sure that we're meeting the needs of the private sector, preparing the next generation of entrepreneurs to start the next great company, making sure that we have the engineers and the computer programmers and other people with the skills we need to power that economic growth. Here in Colorado, we also made it $1 to start a new business, which is an initiative that we were very excited about. We wanted to market it as free to start a business, but then we realized that bots would register millions of businesses, and we didn't want that. So we made it $1. It's almost free, but at least it got the bots out of it, and it did increase new business startups by about a third, and saved people $50, $100, $150, depending on what kind of business they were registering. But, again, might not sound like a lot, but if your entire budget to start your business is $400, saving you $100 to incorporate is a pretty darn big deal, right? So it encourages people to be able to take the risk, and we're very excited by that work. We find solutions in Colorado, so we work to build affordable, sustainable future for our state. I want to thank all of you for your commitment to leading in business and innovation, your entrepreneurial creativity, for helping to make Colorado one of the best economies and places to live in the world. Denver was recently rated as the hottest job market in the United States. Now, that's good for job seekers, not always good for companies, but again, I like to look at the glasses half full for startups. If people are looking at relocating here from other places, they know that if their startup job doesn't work out, they are very likely to find another job with the way the economy is going here. So again, it has challenges, but obviously overall, we're much happier having a strong job sector well below national unemployment rates. And that does mean that entrepreneurs can take risks, knowing that if it doesn't work out, they will likely be able to find work and support themselves and their family once again. We've also worked to make healthcare more portable. We're one of the leaders in implementing on the exchange. Many small businesses don't want to have healthcare on the table, on their table for something to accomplish. So we've really focused on how we can say, look, you can do it through the small business side. The healthcare exchange, obviously, if you want to do it as a company, we welcome that, but we realize that can be a distraction for many early stage entrepreneurs and also for founders who risk losing their healthcare from their large employer when they step out to do it themselves. So we've really focused on affordability in the exchange with both reinsurance, with some waivers that we got from the federal government. So we have one of the lower costs in the nation for healthcare purchased in the exchange. Obviously, that is something that ties into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, because very few people want to give up their healthcare altogether to work for a startup, especially founders. Again, we look forward to your help in taking us to the next level. We know that we've just scratched the surface, a lot more work to do. We look forward to learning from all of you, from Victor, from many others who are doing national work in this area to help make sure that Colorado is and remains the very best place to start and scale a new business. Thank you. I get to introduce Dan. I didn't realize that. So, okay, we have a very successful, multiple founder, entrepreneur, venture capitalist who I've gotten to know over the last several years, a number of different success stories. I want to highlight his critical role in helping to bring the quantum tech hub designation to Colorado. Dan, it's really no exaggeration to say it wouldn't have happened but for your work and effort and support. And we appreciate that. It really is a way that we've been able to leverage what you in the private sector are doing, leverage what the state is doing. Yeah, the federal government agreed and looked at it the same way, and they say, hey, Colorado is leveraging what we're doing, and that's why we're going to do it here. Thank you for your many contributions to the entrepreneurial ecosystem as a mentor, as a funder, as an operator, and we are appreciative of your work here today and now giving back here at Startup Denver and sharing some insights with everybody else. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Caruso.
All right, we are going to talk about how to take this to the next level. But I do want to thank our three co-founders of Denver Startup Week, Tammy, Eric, and Ben, for doing this. And I also want to give a special thanks, and hopefully he's distracted, to Governor Polis for diving deep into property tax minutia, because how can I give a bad presentation following that? So there's two things that you need to have a great ecosystem. One is entrepreneurs, but the other is investors. And a lot of the focus of this talk is going to be on our investor ecosystem, our capital formation on the ground here in Colorado. And it's going to set a big, audacious vision for where we can take that. So a long time ago, 2006, in Colorado, which is a galaxy far, far away from Silicon Valley, it was some tough times here. We were coming off the dot bomb, the telecom meltdown, and things were under a lot of stress. and that included the companies and the industries that were key to Colorado. Colorado was the home of cable TV, but by the time this hit, most of the cable TV companies in Colorado were sold to East Coast companies. We had a big, and particularly in northern Colorado, big business around disk storage. Pretty much gave up that leadership both to Silicon Valley and to other parts of the world. And my industry, fiber optic networks, telecom, Colorado played a central role in that. But as the word conveys, telecom was melting down. And many of the companies that were big and prominent here in Colorado were literally struggling to survive, including the company that got me out here, which was Level 3 Communications. Also included Quest, included TW Telecom, which was run by a former colleague of mine, and another company, ICG Communications, that I ended up being CEO of. A lot of the companies on the list did do fine, but a lot of them struggled to survive and didn't survive. But our ecosystem for investors was also in a state of disarray. We only had about 7 or so institutional investors, venture companies, and they weren't very big, certainly by Silicon Valley standards. But 4 of the 7 ceased to exist not too long after this period. 3 of them still exist and do very well to this day. But then 2007 came, and it started changing the tide. Okay, and there were maybe 3 entities that contributed to that more so than any. One was Foundry Group, led by Brad Feld and his team, who started kind of a West Coast-style venture firm here in Colorado. Second was Techstars, which Governor Polis played a role in getting that launched, as did Brad Feld, as did the 2 Davids, David Cohen and David Brown. And then third is Silicon Flatirons at CU Boulder, particularly their entrepreneurship initiative that was led by Phil Weiser, our now Attorney General, and Brad Bernthal. So these 3 kind of formed an alliance and helped turn the corner. So what happened? Well, we started having a string of success stories. So this isn't meant to be startups. This is meant to be startups that became significant companies. But it started small. The company I started, Zayo, was in this first grouping, as was PaySimple, which is now a public company headed up by Eric Reamer in Colorado, called EverCommerce. Datalogix, which was started prior to this, but became a tech company in 2006, 2007, had a very successful exit under Eric Rosa. And then a company called Cold Quanta, which was one of the quantum pioneer companies that's now named Inflection. But still, that's just 4 companies. You know, there may have been a couple others, but 4 that were born in this era that turned into pretty significant companies. You look at the next 3 or 4 years and the number starts to grow. Here you see some companies that you already heard earlier today. Ibotta going public, we mentioned SendGrid, but there are others as well. Quantum Metric is a unicorn, probably a couple times over. We'll hear a lot from that CEO. Cologix, which was started by a colleague of mine out of Level 3, and ended up having a multi-billion-dollar exit. And Agile Space, which is a company that is emerging as a true leader in our space tech industry. Then you fast forward the same number of years, and you look at the success stories that were born in the next 3 or 4 years, and the number is growing. The number of logos is bigger, including some big success stories. We already heard Hotel Engine, renamed Engine, raising money at a multi-billion-dollar valuation. Boom Supersonic, which is going to be here in the next couple of days as well. Let's see, Pax8, another unicorn born here in Colorado. JumpCloud, another unicorn 2 times over, born right here in Colorado. So huge success stories emerging in this era. And then in this next grouping, which is a little bit bigger, but I think it's going to grow to be bigger than this when we tack on a few other companies that were born in this era and also emerge as true leaders. But you have one really interesting company, ironically named not after me, because it's spelled differently, but Caruso Energy Systems, that I just came across. There's definitely a unicorn already doing crazy interesting things. They'll be here over the next couple of days. Outside, which is a media tech company that's doing extraordinarily well. Radia, the world's largest cargo plane, business plane around, it's being built right here in Colorado, and several others. Maybe Quantum, which we'll hear from. Sunblink, a online gaming company that's been #1 on the App Arcade. It was App Arcade Game of the Year last year, amongst many others. So we're growing. We're growing at maybe not an exponential rate, but we're growing at a nice rate when it comes to true scale-up success stories. A lot to celebrate. But let's shift gears now and let's talk about, let me look at the industries though. When you look at the industries, that's also interesting as well, because it's kind of a big grouping when you say B2B, B2C, and then tack on cyber and media. So that's 45%, but you probably could divide that into a couple categories. But what I really want to highlight is these other three categories. On the bottom left, hard tech, which is space, quantum, climate tech, and robotics, is starting to become a very unique and robust ecosystem here in Colorado. Digital infrastructure. We are at the center of digital infrastructure, and although this says 12% as the number of companies, if you looked at the amount of capital being deployed relative to these other ones, it would probably double or maybe triple the slice of the pie, and we'll hear from a few more of those companies in the next couple of days. And then grouped together under the theme of longevity, kind of looks at natural foods, which is very unique and big in Colorado, biopharma, which has always been a very robust industry, particularly in the greater Boulder area, and then fitness and wellness in general is something that we're known for. So I think we could start viewing ourselves as a leader in longevity tech. Okay, so let's switch gears now and talk about capital formation. So what about on-the-ground capital formation? Do we always have to get our money from the East Coast or the West Coast? Or can we get our money here? So we've been doing some real serious research, a combination of Endeavor Colorado, Crucial Ventures, and kind of collaborating with some of the other local investors to try to come up with as complete a list as possible for how many investors are here on the ground in Colorado. The number I think is going to surprise you. It's over 150 investors that are either headquartered here in Colorado or have managing directors or the equivalent here in Colorado. That's a lot. I mean, you've been hard pressed in the past to name 10. Now you can name quite a number of them. And the majority of them, the supermajority, are venture investors. Added to that is some growth equity, LBO style investors, family offices, which we're going to talk a little bit more about, and strategics, meaning corporations that have investing arms, such as Liberty Media and VF Corp. And are these just onesie-twosie type of investors? Is that why the number is so big? The answer is no. So we put together this thing we called the power rating. And the power rating kind of has two dimensions. One dimension being how much money are they likely to deploy in Colorado in the next, say, 3 to 4 years, and then how many companies are they likely to invest in? So the higher amounts of money and the more number of companies gets you to the far right. If you deploy a lot of money, but it's basically 1 or 2 investments, you're still to the right, but on the bottom right. And you can see the way we've classified it, and we're still working on this, there's at least 18 that are in that upper right quadrant, another 31 in the middle, and another 40 kind of right in the middle. So a significant portion of them are going to deploy significant capital and invest in quite a number of companies. However, it's not all rosy, because if you count up the number of top 25 venture or private equity companies in Colorado, you get to a different conclusion. There aren't any. Now that's not exactly true, because we have had, and still do, Foundry Group, but they're winding down, so kind of remove them from that list. And Partners Group is a very large firm, and it's very important that they've decided to locate their North America headquarters here in Colorado, but they're not really a venture investor, a little bit, but mostly a growth equity and fund of funds and even public stock investor. And then Valor Equity does fit in that classification of one of the top, and I just learned recently that I think they opened up an office, I'm told they opened up an office in Cherry Creek, which is turning into a great hub for venture investing. Okay, so big audacious goal time. How do we take this further? How do we go up level here? How do we become a top 5 geography for capital formation by the year 2035? That would really stand us out. Now, we're not going to catch California, we're not going to catch New York, but we should be able to catch many of the others, at least to crack the top 5, if we really get and continue on the track that we're on. And let me start by kind of adding to an ecosystem chart that is familiar, but it adds the component of investors. So this is titled Investor Entrepreneur Ecosystem. We know that when you have a scale-up success story, it spawns off other success stories. Entrepreneurs who are part of that company go and start new businesses in that same sector. And then industry or sector leadership develops around space tech, around quantum, around biopharma, around energy. So you start developing the ecosystems. But a similar dynamic is playing out relative to investors. So investors start to focus on a geography because there's a lot going on. If you want to invest in quantum, you better pay attention to Colorado. If you want to invest in space tech, you better be on the ground here. And then investors gain an edge because instead of investing by getting on an airplane or getting on a Zoom call, they start to become part of the community. And then that spawns off other investment firms. So Partners Group is a great example. When you go visit Partners Group at their sprawling campus over in Interlaken, you can't help but think that a lot of people who are working there are going to decide, now that I've got 2, 3, 4, 5 years experience at Partners Group, I want to go be part of a new firm and I want to stay here in Colorado because why would I ever want to leave? And so you're going to see kind of the larger firms that are starting to be here and grow spawn off other ones. And all this is going to feed into each other. Okay, so with that in mind, we're going to talk about the 6 things we need to do in order to become one of the top ecosystems for investing. The first one, which we're really good at, is celebrate our success stories, our scale-up success stories, and the spawn-offs that come out of them. The second, which we're also very good at, is leveraging our leadership in key ecosystems. The quantum, the climate, the digital infrastructure, longevity, make ourselves known for being amongst the leaders in these very important industries. Number 3 is we need to promote and celebrate our headquarter venture and private equity firms. So these are teams of people who have professionals on the ground here. Some of them want to invest not just in Colorado, but some want to focus on Colorado. We need to know who they are and treat them like we treat our entrepreneurial heroes, celebrate them and help increase their profile, and hopefully, invest into their funds. The fourth one, which we have some work to do, is how do we tech activate our ultra high net worth family offices? A lot of our ultra high net worth family offices got their wealth not through tech, but maybe stuff that was considered tech 20 or 30 years ago. How do we get them more comfortable with investing in tech and investing in Colorado tech? And likewise with institutional investors who will follow with them and strategic investors. Number 5 is we need to entice the top 25 to get people on the ground here, including the arms of the big tech companies. So we need to figure out how can we get them to be on the ground. And then lastly, number 6, perhaps we could take this one step further and start to think about what would it take to really have here in Colorado as one of our cheers assets, a venture fund that was really considered a top 25. How can we form that, launch that, have that gain momentum? That's something we're going to grapple with. So those are the 6 that we need to do. We got a few years to do it. And if so, we're going to emerge as a top 5 for capital formation. And if anyone's interested in leaning in, got a couple of email addresses, so get your cameras ready really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4. More importantly, I'm going to close off by just telling you about a podcast we're launching today called The Bearded Roars. There's some information in the back corner there, and a book that we're going to publish, I'm going to publish toward the end of the year called Bandwidth, which talks about, among other things, Colorado's big role in the bandwidth industry. So thank you all, and welcome to Denver Startup Week. Oh, well, you got the point.
All right, thank you, Dan Caruso. I think we all can get excited about the idea of being in the top 5 by 35. And to Dan's points there, we're going to continue with our program and really get into celebrating those successes of those scale-ups, and doing so with our CEO Fireside Chats. So this has been a format that we started a couple years ago, where what we want to do is find a CEO who's been starting to hit that scale-up success point, and then allow them to have a seat and tell those stories, those unvarnished truths that all those entrepreneurs out there deal with, but do so by pulling up a CEO that's maybe a little bit early on in their journey with them, and sit down and have that back and forth conversation so that all of us can learn from it. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our first set of CEOs, Brian Ponarelli, CEO of FusionAuth, and Sharpie, CEO at Searchcraft. Brian and Sharpie, come on up. So this is one of the ones I love to do. So Brian's one of the foundational leaders here in the Denver startup community. Anybody who's been around long enough has definitely run into Brian and all the great stuff that he's helped support. He even was one of our very early committee chairs on Denver Startup Week and put in a lot of hours helping build this. To see him being on the main stage with it is absolutely awesome to see. And his most recent company, FusionAuth, which was bootstrapped for a long time, their very first capital they took in was just a measly $65 million with that first round. And Brian's gonna have a great conversation with Sharpie, who's the CEO of Searchcraft, a Denver-based startup that implements robust, high-performance search functionality into any digital application. So with that, please welcome Brian and Sharpie.
Thanks. All right, thank you. All right, Brad guy.
All right, let's do it.
I've never done this before. This is great.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about where you started. So you worked at a lot of companies, BEA, YRC, probably some other acronyms, Orbitz, I think is a name everybody knows.
Yep.
As a business owner myself, I've owned my own business for 17 years now, and it is absolute insanity. What made you think, I'm going to go do something on my own? Like, that is crazy. It is a roller coaster, man.
Yeah, so a couple of things. The first one is that like my entire family has been entrepreneurs. So my grandfather owned the House of Glass, which was down on Broadway. So anybody who bought their glass back in the, from the 50s to the 80s probably bought it from him. He also did a lot of the buildings around here's glass. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom owned a business. My grandfather on the other side owned a machine shop, and anybody who gets Colgate, his machines tube those things. So I just kind of had it in my blood for a long time, but I also kind of got sick of working for ginormous companies and not really having the freedom to do whatever I wanted. So I just figured out an idea that worked and took the plunge.
Great, and one of those first plunges was CleanSpeak, right?
That's right, yeah. So I was working at a startup. They needed some profanity filtering for online social. I couldn't find anything, built it for them, asked them if I could take it home. They said, yeah, go for it. We don't want to have anything to do with that. So I did it nights and weekends, and then once I started to get some sales going, I jumped ship, quit the day job, and went full time.
Amazing. And CleanSpeak then led, and this is kind of a similar story that a lot of founders have. They ended up kind of stumbling across another opportunity because they see a gap in the market. And that is kind of what led to FusionAuth. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we did CleanSpeak and tried to scale it. Now that's like sort of a micro niche business, right? There's not a whole lot of people that need like really awesome profanity filtering and are willing to spend like tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on that. So we had a handful of customers, great customers, but it was never going to be $1 billion business. So we tried to come up with a bunch of other ideas and a lot of starts and stops, but eventually ended up on login, right? We had a bunch of customers that were doing user things like game companies, lots of users. We were doing the profanity filtering, but then we saw sort of this opportunity to jump in and do login for those folks as well. Started coding it. Luckily, we were making money off of CleanSpeak, so we didn't have to go out and raise any money. Built it, launched it, and then saw it really take off.
So do we got a lot of founders in the room? Audible. I can't see anybody. So when you're in the world of startups, you're gonna hear product market fit a lot. You're gonna hear words like traction. These are make or break things for a startup, and startups don't have a big timeline to sort of prove that traction. At what point did you start to see a little bit of evidence of traction, and how did that affect you? Did it change the way the product was going? Was it a surprise? Can you kind of speak to that?
So we started to do I know Andre pretty well, so we did the ping identity model, right? So try to do really huge whale sales, Fortune 500. Those sales are insanely hard. So we were just about to shut down, and we decided, well, let's just give this thing away for free to developers and see what happens. And we've set a metric. In 3 months, we had to have 500 downloads. Otherwise, we were going to just shut everything down. 3 months later, we had close to 5,000 downloads, right? And so then we realized, we're like, oh shit, there's something here. Like, we got to work on this more. And so we didn't shut it down.
Were there any market segments that surprised you?
Not really. It's
Okay.
like basically anything with login, right? And so like we get this question a ton, and people are like, "Well, what segments do you find work the best?" And we're like, "Yeah, if you have login, like that."
Okay, so having a startup is very difficult. You're working long hours. Like I said, you need that pivotal moment where you're getting traction. Were there any times that were like pretty dark and you just wanted to give up and go back to working for the man?
Yeah. So we were struggling between these, Clean Speak, that was just not really growing, sort of starting to trend downwards. Fusion Auth wasn't really taking off. And so we actually came up with this idea, which we called Ram It in the Ground. And so basically what we decided is we're like, well, CleanSpeak's generating about $2 million in revenue. It'll probably take about 10 years for it to go to zero. How about we do nothing and just ride that thing until we ram it in the ground, right? And so that was sort of our backup plan. And that's like right when at the stage we were like, okay, let's just do the rebrand, give it away for free and see what happens. And luckily it worked out.
Nice. And along the way, I'm sure mistakes were made. Let's call them learning opportunities. Can you speak to some of the mistakes that you learned from, or that maybe changed the trajectory of the business, or maybe you personally along the way?
Sure. So I think one of the biggest lessons, it takes a while to learn, is that when you have a gut instinct about somebody and you're like, I don't think this is going to work out, or you make a sort of a bad choice. And this really is just mainly about people. You've got to move quickly, and you just got to get rid of them and got to move on. You got to part ways. I've spent way too many months, years stewing over whether or not it was the best decision to keep this person going and on board, and just kind of keep inching along, and then at the end of it, you're just like, no, we got to cut it, we got to go. And so it's brutal, it's hard to do, but you got to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Because when you've got a startup and you're building a product, you want to just be focusing on that product, right? But what many that get into this don't realize is they're also building a team. And that team is just as important as the product. So you got to have something that meshes, right?
That's right. Yeah, the team is super important.
So there's a quote that I want to say. It was from a podcast. David C. Baker, he's a really brilliant guy. He said, one thing about startups is what you want to do is enjoy what you're good at, but be diligent about what you aren't. And that really rings true to myself, because I'm a visual guy, I'm a designer, that's my background. When it comes to doing accounting or P&Ls or projections, I just cringe. But that quote is something that always sticks out to me. It's like, nope, I gotta be diligent about this, and that kind of then ends up making it fun. Is there something like that for you, where you really enjoy something, but then you have to be really diligent about this other thing? Oh
yeah, absolutely. So I'm a pretty good coder, and okay. I wrote both CleanSpeak and Fusion Auth from the ground up, and so I'm really good at that. And any day that I get a code is a good day for me. And then any day that I have to work on marketing is it's really hard to get out of bed, So yeah, marketing's not my cup of tea. It's not my favorite.
Yeah, so remember that, founders. Be diligent about what you aren't.
That's right.
So there is a happy ending to this story, as what was kind of told. So you put in the hard work. You got those 5,000 installs, and you got an exit.
Yep.
And can you tell us a little bit about that experience, how it came about, and where it led to today?
Sure, yeah. So been building for about 16 years. It's brutal, especially when you don't pay yourself much and you just slog along, and it takes a toll on family, friends. It just takes a toll. And so when you start to see your company, get that growth and start to hockey stick, I made the decision for my own personal health, my family well-being, to take some chips off the table. So last year we were bootstrapped again, growing 100, 200, 300x or 300% year over year, and I just decided it was time. So we did a deal with a growth equity firm, took a bunch of chips off the table, got a little money to help us grow, and it made a massive difference in my mental health.
Amazing. Thank you, Brian. We're going to go into one more round here, one more question.
Let's do it.
Let's get some energy in this room here. It's a 20-parter.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to do a lightning round. I'm going to give Brian a bunch of questions. He's going to give one answer, and let's hear an audible yay or nay from the crowd, whether you think that was the correct answer.
Do it.
Are you ready? Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Ooh. Yeah, nice. All right. iOS or Android?
Oh, wait, sorry, what was it, Evan?
iOS or Android?
Oh, iOS for sure.
All right. Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
You spent some time in Chicago. Pizza or pasta?
Ooh, pizza, deep dish.
Ooh. Deep dish or thin crust?
Oh, the bigger, the deeper, the better.
Oh, nice. Beer or bourbon?
I'm allergic to hops, so I have to switch and go bourbon.
All right. Sweet pickles or dill pickles?
Ooh, dill.
That's the right answer there.
That's the right answer.
Let's see. The Big Woo or Wu-Tang?
Ooh, Wu-Tang.
Good one. Chips and salsa or salsa dance?
Chips and salsa, I suck at dancing.
Escargot or escalators?
Escalators.
Yep,
Yep.
good one. All right. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
All right. GIF or GIF?
Ooh, gigabyte? Gigawatt? It's a GIF.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. That's it. Thank you, Brian.
All right, thanks, y'all.
Thanks, you guys. That was great. I'm not sure about escalator and escargot. I don't know. What do you think? What is it? I think just in seeing you up here, Brian, I was thinking about what you all were talking about and picking out comments or thoughts that really stuck with me. But the thing I really want to point out is there's nothing that can make me feel better than to see Brian's success, because he's a person in our community that has given and given and given. And as busy as he's been building his company and dealing with everything he's had to deal with inside the company, he never once hesitates to meet with somebody, talk to somebody, and give back. So for me, that's my biggest takeaway about you. I respect you so much, and I'm so proud and excited for you for your success. Truly. This is a really, really good human being right here. Next to the stage, we're going to hear from Liz Georgie, co-founder and CEO of Suna. And also, we're going to hear from Megan Henkin, co-founder of MyUTI. Liz is no stranger to the DSW stage. She's the co-founder of Suna, a creative studio. They use tech to enhance the work of creatives and improve access to high-quality custom content. Liz is leading voice in the charge to help close the gender gap in VC funding, which we definitively need. And Megan is co-founder of MyUTI, a visionary entrepreneur dedicated to revolutionizing the way that we manage and treat urinary tract infections through innovative digital solutions. Both of these incredible women are leading companies with female co-founder teams. So I'm really excited to welcome them to the stage. It's all yours.
Before we start, I feel like, look, it gets to be a long day. And so if you're standing in the back and you don't want to stand anymore, lots of people have left. So come have a seat up here or here. We'd love to have you a little bit closer to us. And if you're just trying to stand back there, then you do you, I guess.
They may want a quick escape so they don't have to talk about UTIs and STDs.
We could, your company is very unsexy, but it does, it's still sexy. So,
well, sexy time is generally.
If you are worried you might have a UTI, please go. I'm just going to quickly promote my friend's company before we even talk. If you're worried you have a UTI or an STD, please go to Google and search MyUTI. At home UTI testing, everybody. Like who wants to go to the doctor for that?
Yes.
Do it at home, get your medicine, feel better, get back on the streets. Okay.
Yes, thank you. That was a nice plug. We figured if you can swab your nose and send it off to a lab during COVID, we'd mail a urine cup to your house and you could take care of business yourself and send it to our lab. So thank you for the intro.
No problem.
So I learned something interesting about you today.
What did you learn?
That this is your 5th Denver Startup Week.
It is my 5th Denver Startup Week with this company, with Suna, yes.
Yes. So let's start at the beginning. What was your aha moment with Suna? What made you want to start? And what did you see in the marketplace that you thought you had a lane?
Yeah. So I know that when people introduce my company, oftentimes the first thought is a creative studio. How is that possibly a tech company? So let me explain to you why this is a tech company. Every single thing you buy on the internet, you buy on the internet because of the photos and videos that sell it to you. And you are in this room, you are buying shit on TikTok. I know that about you. You are going on Amazon. Can you imagine going on Amazon and scrolling through the photos and just buying something blind? There is a ton of infrastructure in e-commerce, but the most important part of our purchasing decision is that visual, and it was untouched by technology. So back in 2018, I was having a lot of friends starting Shopify stores. They would call me up. They would say, Liz, I really need somebody to take pictures of my product for my Shopify store. Who can I call? And I would look at them and be like, oh God, after 15 years as a professional creative, I actually have absolutely no idea who you should call. And I kept thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And finally in 2019, I said, you know what? We're going to build the preeminent tech platform to make it incredibly easy for brands to create content, manage it across the places where they sell their products online, and then measure that visual performance so they can make better decisions about how to promote their products in the future. And 5 years later, that is exactly what we do.
Yeah. And I've used their studio. It is by far the easiest photo shoot I have ever managed. They look incredible, and my co-founder doesn't live here in Denver, so what she was able to do is just log in during the photo shoot and be an armchair quarterback and boss me around because I was not directing appropriately.
Yes, well, they can join a virtual photo shoot, which is even more exciting.
Very easy, very easy. So let's kind of talk about your journey, because this is not your first experience doing a startup.
No, I have a terminal illness called entrepreneurship.
Yes, that's what we were talking about. It is an official mental illness, being an entrepreneur. So when you listen to all these podcasts about being an entrepreneur and the traits you have to have, they always talk about resilience. And it always strikes me a little, I don't know, like a trope word.
Yes.
But what does that word mean to you as a founder in practice? How you have to deal with that on a daily, yearly basis?
Yeah. So I've been an entrepreneur now for 12 years. And I had a production company I ran for 7 years, sold that company. And, now I've been running Suna for 5. I also, though, grew up in a family business. So, family businesses being a theme here today, I grew up working in a canoe outfitter in northern Minnesota, renting canoes and kayaks to people going on canoe expeditions in the Boundary Waters canoe area. And I was a hustler. When I was 9, I was having $100 weekends with a blueberry stand instead of lemonade stands are, if any of you have children, hot tip, lemonade stands are for the clowns. The fresh fruit is where it's at. So I would go pick blueberries off the bushes in northern Minnesota, sell them to people who were about to go out on an expedition, come back from an expedition. And sure, was the money great? Of course. Has success been awesome? Yes. Are there tons of ups and downs? Of course. But actually, resilience is not the thing you need. The thing you need to do this and to continue to do it and to see it through is to have friends. People that you can count on, people that you can call when things aren't going well, people you can celebrate with when things are going great. And for those of you that are here, there might be a friend in this room who is going to be that person that can be there for you when things are really hard or when things are really great. And so I would say, if you want to do this for the long term, if you want to have an incredible outcome like some of the outcomes you've heard about today, then you need friends.
Yes.
You need friends more than anything else.
Yes. If not anything, just to commiserate when it's been
That's right.
a garbage day. Okay, so female founder.
You're joking.
I know.
Anybody else
they
missed
like-
that when I walked up in the pink sweater and the high heels? Got it. Good. We're clear.
They like to have a few of us show up.
Yeah.
So the landscape for women founders has significantly changed over the last few years. And in fact, I actually think that 40% of tech founders are actually women.
True. Facts. You speak facts.
So what positive changes have you seen in kind of the founder startup ecosystem for women? And I mean, there are some negatives when it comes to VC funding and things like that.
Sure.
But what positive things have you seen?
We can focus on the positive. There are more women than ever starting companies, both in Colorado but across this country. There are more women who are having economic outcomes from their businesses. For the first time ever this year in the United States of America, the IRS said that women were the head of household in 51% of American families. Women are bringing in the cash, my friends. Women are working really hard and powering and fueling this economy. And I think in Colorado specifically, when I moved here 8 years ago, there was, a very small group of women who were starting companies, let alone scaling and growing companies. Now there are many women in this community who have scaled their businesses to a significant size, who have large teams, who have expanded beyond our geography even. And so there are a lot of positives. But what I will say is I really look forward to the day when people say that I am a great fucking founder. Not just a female founder.
Oh, yeah.
I really, really do look forward to that day.
I love that. So we are currently what's considered a down market.
Yes.
How should founders think about the market in the context of their own business strategy and what they're looking to do?
Right now is actually an incredible time when we're coming off of quite a few years of very frothy venture activity, quite a few years of very frothy purchasing activity. There was a moment there in 2020 and 2021 where any middle manager in corporate America could swipe a credit card and buy software. And that is just not true anymore, right? We are definitely living in a time when corporate belts are tightening, family belts are tightening. People are just not spending their money as freely as they were, and VCs aren't deploying capital as freely as they were. And so what I really think is a good thing to do is focus on the fundamentals right now. Get to know the basics of your business. I have a joke that I make with founders who, don't know their numbers, where I say, if you don't know your numbers, you actually don't know your company. And you've got to actually spend some cycles in this market, really getting to know your numbers, finding those opportunities. I'm embarrassed to tell all of you, we did in February of this year, we did an audit of our spend, and we were spending $90,000 a year on software that I didn't even know what it was as a business. And all of us have that in some way, shape, or form in our own companies and in our own sales cycles. And so just be diligent, really get smart about your business, because it turns out that when you get really smart about your business, you find those little moments of magic that might actually turn your business into a far more profitable, far more high growth organization.
Couldn't agree more. So you brought up fundraising.
Yes.
How many other people in the room are actually fundraising right now?
Or want to fundraise? Okay, some.
Not a lot. Okay. Well, good news. Fundraising can be a grind. So what has been your approach to really manage your mental health through that kind of a process, which is in some cases, and in my case, in some ways has been a lot of rejection and just having to show up again and again and again and finding the right rooms?
I think if you are going to start a business, whether you're going to raise funds or you're going to go a traditional route and try to get debt from a bank, or you're just going to try to go ask your friends and family for money, you've just got to have a really comfortable relationship with no. And you've got to figure out how to love the word no. And the way that I've tried to reorient my relationship with no is an incredible prioritization mechanism. When somebody says no to you, they are saying, in a way, it's like an invitation for you to say, great, goodbye, good luck, I'm going to move on to the next person. And that is a great way, I think, to really think about that dynamic. But the other thing here is look, if you're in this room, you must care about business. You must want to be successful. Maybe you work at a startup. Maybe you want to start a startup. Maybe you've started a startup. All of this ambition that we all feel there is something about that that is inherently going to keep powering you forward. You've got to remind yourself to celebrate the yeses, though, along the way, or the no's will absolutely crush you. And so celebrate every small win. Celebrate the fact that you just showed up here, frankly, that you left your house, you came here, go to the happy hour, have a drink, high five someone for getting your ass in a seat and learning something. Like, all of these things have to be about learning, growing, and also congratulating yourself for even the smallest of victories. I literally congratulated myself last week for just not losing my shit on a vendor. I was like, I did not lose my shit. I was so calm, and they were not. I am constantly congratulating. Look, y'all, for the last 3 years, everybody has been predicting the demise of my company because of AI. Like, every single conversation I have right now, it kind of goes like this. Oh, it's nice to meet you, Liz. So when is AI going to kill your company? That literally is how 90% of conversation, whether it's bankers, investment bankers, private equity firms, growth firms, venture firms, they all believe that my demise is imminent. And they're not shy about it. And the thing that you have to do is you just have to laugh at it and be like, look, I'm growing faster than the vast majority of companies in my space, and I have now seen 40 deal books for AI photo companies that want me to buy them because they're garbage companies.
Yes.
So, and guess what? I bought one. So you've got to be constantly finding opportunities to say yes to your own success and to give yourself that permission to celebrate it.
Well, I think I got the sign to wrap it up, and I couldn't have picked a better thing.
Great. Wrap it up. Thank you. We're done here. Have a great time, everybody.
To wrap it up. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Liz and Megan, so much. It's awesome to have the energy up there. And again, want to give a shout out to Liz, much like Brian, someone who, despite having everything going on as a CEO, still manages to show up all the time for the community, whether as a mentor, whether as an investor, whether it's just a voice of leadership. So Liz, thank you so much. With that, let's invite our last CEO conversation to the stage. And this is another one that I just love the story with it. So our final two founders, we have Adil Khan, founder of Magic School AI, and Rusty Kaur, founder and CEO of Scholarly Software. So what I love with Adil, come on up, guys. So what I love about Adil is he was in the other chair last year. So within 12 months, we've now got a Series A, and how many millions of teachers on the platform? 3 million teachers on the platform in 12 months. So these are the type of stories just we absolutely love to hear here at Denver Startup Week. And so Rusty is one of those up-and-comers, CEO of Scholarly, where he and his team are empowering academics with powerful solutions for managing, analyzing, and collaborating on scholarly work. So please welcome Adil and Rusty.
Yeah, excited to be here and honored to share the stage with you, Adil. So Liz, before I jump in, your story about blueberries actually resonated with me because I grew up on a family business, family orchard, and my first lesson in entrepreneurship was my mother, when I was about 5 or 6, paying me 25 cents a pint to pick blueberries. And when I did the math on that, I was like, hey, I am getting screwed here. And so I was like, there's a lot of value to owning the business. So anyways, that really resonated with me. But Adil, so your background as an educator, I think is really, really inspiring in terms of like now Magic School supporting literally millions of educators. So I think just would be interested to hear, I think the crowd would be interested to hear a little bit about your founding journey and kind of how you came up with the idea and got going with Magic School.
Yeah, so like Rusty mentioned, I'm not like a software person, entrepreneur. I am a lifelong educator. I was a teacher here in Colorado, and my first entrepreneurial endeavor was founding a public high school here in Colorado called Conservatory Green High School in the Central Park neighborhood. That was my first dream manifest. It's an absolutely incredible school, and I'm so deeply proud of it. After founding Conservatory Green High School, we graduated our first class of seniors. I coached principals for about a year and left that role and for like an intentional sabbatical. Founding something is really hard. I never thought I'd found something again. But I took some time off. I traveled the world a little bit. I came back right around November of 2022, and this was the ChatGPT moment. So generative AI was taking over the world. I happened to be thinking about what I'd do next after my travels, And I've always been into emerging technology. So I started tinkering with ChatGPT, and I found so much utility for public school educators, what I had been doing my entire career. There felt like there was product market fit before I knew what that word meant for AI in education. So, I did what a principal would do. I went out to my old school and I trained a couple teachers on ChatGPT. I said, hey, look at all these ways you can use this in your classroom. You can build lessons plans with it. You can help build a student support plan with it. Here's all these ways I found out it can be really useful for you. And teachers, the first time you see generative AI is kind of like a jaw on the floor moment. And teachers were so inspired and excited by it. And, I'd always give them homework. I said, look, I'm going to come back in a week. I want to hear all the ways you use this in your classroom and throughout the school day, because I suspect some of these use cases I've thought of are just scratching the surface of all the ways you can make an impact in schools with AI and fill that issue of teacher burnout and lack of capacity in school buildings with this new technology. I'd come back, a week later, and the vast majority of folks that I talked to had a similar story. I had the blank page problem when I got there after you left. I tried to do what you showed me to do, but it just didn't quite come out the same way, and it was taking me more time to use it than it was actually saving me time. But there were one or two teachers who just had a million things to share with me. They were like, there are so many ways I'm using this. This is an incredible thing. It's changed the way I've taught. So I knew I was onto something. But it wasn't sticking, and I thought, well, there's got to be a way to do this that will make this really accessible to educators, harness this like transformational new technology in a way that educators can natively understand. So kind of set out with some ambition to build a domain-specific tool, the vertical AI product for education, which is a pretty ambitious plan I'd learned later. Paying myself, kind of from my bank account, really bleeding it, and having some friends help me start the company who were also working for free. Employee number one, Alana, is over here. She was working for free, helping me build the original product. And we launched what I would call like a pretty crappy MVP in 2023, and we called it Magic School. And launching Magic School was pretty much like me on a LinkedIn video on a Loom, like walking through the product and how it would be used. As well as some Instagram posts from another amazing part of our team. Steffi, who started building our brand, is another friend who was working for me for free, who did some really amazing work for us early. And Magic School went from my friends at my old school were using it to 100 teachers using it to 1,000 educators using it to about a year later crossing 3 million educators using it, which is it's the fastest growing product for schools ever. And that number, 3 million, is an astonishing one because there are 3.5 million educators, part and full-time, in the U.S. So if you have a friend or you're adjacent to the education space, if you ask them what Magic School is, it's more likely they've used it or heard of it than not at all in the span of about 12 months.
That's wild. Yeah.
So, the thing that's been so inspiring to me, that, I founded a school, which is an inspiring journey in itself, and one of the things I'll always be most proud of, but there is something about the leverage that software provides to make a difference and make an impact on the world that has been so incredibly powerful on this journey. But Rusty, I've been so inspired by your story and getting to know you in the last couple weeks and months, and I got to know you as you were raising your seed round, and you're doing really transformational work for universities. And there are already a lot of household names that you've contracted with. You've gotten some pretty significant traction. Harvard, Duke, Carnegie Mellon. These are household names that are working with your company. And congratulations on just closing out your seed round. I'd love to hear about your journey in founding your company, Scholarly.
Yeah, so my journey was quite a bit different. So I'd been working, leading the data and analytics org at a Colorado company, Vail Resorts, for those who ski and ride. So very, very different than the education space. But I was actually at Thanksgiving talking to my father-in-law, who was a provost and dean in higher ed for a number of years, and telling him about some of the stuff we were doing on data visualization, data automation, AI. And he just kind of sighed and lamented the state of software in higher ed, particularly for faculty. it's been a lot more investment in the student side relative to faculty, and he just was kind of bemoaning the state of affairs in higher ed, and he was sort of talking, it's like really hard to run an effective higher ed institution when you have really bad software and limited data, a lot of the things that the private sector has become really accustomed to having at their fingertips. And so I got kind of like hooked on that, fascinated by this problem where, higher ed had been really impactful in my life, believe in the mission of higher ed, and also believed I had a lot of the kind of background and expertise in things that could help to address a lot of these pain points. So I talked to a ton of folks in higher ed, a lot of folks in the space, really tried to understand their pain and kind of what they needed, and that process was what really motivated me, but also kind of validated that there was something here. And so from there I kind of went a bit of a different route than you went, a little less organic, but I knew we were going to basically set out to build, I call it like the rippling for higher ed, where it's like all of your data kind of in one place across HR, finance, scholarly activity, and it's a really hard thing to build. It's really complex, and so I wanted to get a world-class co-founder and CTO. So I did an accelerator program and kind of matched with Kelly in the back there. He was an awesome CTO, spent a number of years at Gusto, kind of had that really deep expertise that we needed, and so we've been kind of off to the races since then. But I think as we've gotten deeper and deeper into it, it's just been more motivating and more validating to hear our customers talk about the stuff that they deal with every day that just really doesn't need to be that hard. Yeah.
It's an awesome story, Rusty. I'd love to hear, what are some of the personal lessons that you've learned along the way? Being a founder can change you. What are some of those ways that you've changed, a personal lesson you've learned in your journey so far?
That's a good question. So I would say, so prior to this, I'd spent a number of years in kind of larger businesses, larger organizations, and had been in a variety of roles, done pretty well, risen pretty quickly, and so I tend to think, I was like, okay, I'm not bad at this business thing, like I know what I'm doing. And then being a founder will humble you pretty quickly, and very quickly kind of came to the realization, it's like, wow, I am not very good at a lot of different things. And so, kind of got by that first year, really with just like doing a lot of things good enough and try rolling up the sleeves and just getting it done. But just really drove home, I think recognizing my own limitations, my own weaknesses, and I think just drove home for me, especially now that we've raised our seed round, like how important that team is that we build, and having those complementary skill sets. But yeah, definitely humbling, humbling for me. So one thing I was curious about, so you mentioned, as you were getting started, having some friends that you'd work with, and the growth that you've seen over the last year and a half is astronomical. So a lot of this stuff, especially coming from education, is new. It's new, like stuff you've never done before, seeing for the first time. So how have you thought about mentors and kind of finding folks? I'm getting this signal to wrap up, but yeah, mentors and kind of like folks that have guided you along the way.
Yeah, so mentorship, as a former principal, I didn't know anything about venture capital or startups or software, and mentorship's a huge part of my story. It's certainly not possible without one, having mentors early. I had 2 angel investors who were my first investors who happened to be incredible coaches. And I learned later that not everyone has angel investors who help as much as mine did. But as I was raising my seed round, like, what are all these terms that people are saying? What is a term sheet? All of those things that I could call someone, like at the drop, of a hat and say, hey, like, an investor said this to me. What does that mean? Or, how do I make decisions about these things I don't know? And I always say that, I had been a leader before, I'd had success before, and I certainly had to be humbled in certain ways. And I always tell people, be humble about the things you don't know, learn, and then trust your instincts about the things that you learn, and then have a lot of conviction around the things you do. So I knew education, I knew the product, I knew what I wanted for education, and I never questioned those things. But the things that I didn't know, I was a learner and humble and tried to keep those things as informed as possible while also not abdicating the decision that ultimately as a founder I'd have to make. And I know we have to wrap up.
10 minutes goes fast.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Amazing. Thank you so much. great is it to hear from all of these local leaders who are making a mark right here in Denver? Can we give a huge round of applause? And I have to say, my life somewhat lives education adjacent, as you said, as a mom and a chair of the Denver Public Schools Bond. And in fact, my son recently wrote a proposal for a new skate park in the Highlands neighborhood using AI, and he's 12. So when it was littered with words like community engagement, I thought, there's something going on there. So really incredible work. Thank you so very much. My name is Courtney Garrett. I am the president and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership, and we are so incredibly proud to be a Titan sponsor of Denver Startup Week. I know it's getting late in the day. Let's get our energy up. And in addition to our commitment to this 1 week, which is a real showcase of the startup ecosystem here in our city, we are wholly committed to this community year-round. Support of entrepreneurs, innovation, and inclusion is woven into every aspect of the Downtown Denver Partnership's work. As we steward the future of downtown through our Center for Economic Development and Neighborhood Planning, steward the experience that you have in our spaces through our Center of Place, and as we mobilize the community as champions for downtown Denver. And there's so much that you all are doing as an incredibly important part of our economy, a driver that's a part of what we do in downtown every day. So I am absolutely thrilled today to unveil our startup report. Who loves data? Come on. We have some really exciting insights this year that I think truly underscore so much of what you've heard from CEOs here today. The headline for this report is really quite simply, Denver is still a powerhouse for innovation and entrepreneurship. Here come the numbers. Over 24,000 tech businesses call Colorado home, with about 73% of those located in the Denver metro area. These businesses represent 140,000 jobs as of the end of 2023, which is a 37% increase over the last decade. And it's not been the easiest decade of our lives, right? So really incredible to see those numbers still moving at an upward trajectory. Denver's pool of tech talent is also not just growing, it's continuing to thrive. And we're attracting and retaining some of the brightest minds in the industry. In fact, as you heard from Governor Polis, ADP named Denver as the hottest job market in the nation, something we're incredibly proud of. And Colorado, with Denver at its heart, is also consistently ranked as the best state for women entrepreneurs. We heard that just now, right? And fucking great entrepreneurs, right? Even better. And this isn't just a title, it's a reflection of our commitment to diversity, inclusion, and making this a place for everyone. About 45% of Colorado's small businesses are owned by women. That's 244,000 businesses throughout the state. And in 2022, women-led Colorado startups reached a funding milestone, raising $955 million, which was a 20% increase from capital raised in 2021. In short, these numbers don't lie. Denver's startup scene is maintaining its competitiveness. We've experienced a 12.6% year-over-year increase in new startup formations just in the city center district alone. And Denver's expansion stage exit values are on the rise, indicating that this is becoming a more and more mature and established ecosystem. Denver is fostering an environment where innovation thrives, where our diversity is celebrated, and growth is the norm. So I encourage all of you to view our startup report for a deeper dive on all of these points and many more insights about our ecosystem. So whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, or simply someone who's excited about innovation, we are home to an outstanding startup community, and we invite each and every one of you to be a part of it. So get the most out of Denver Startup Week. And please help me thank the founders. Again, Tammy, Ben, and Eric, for all that you have done to bring this wonderful community to life, to nurture it, and to grow it, and make it the success that it still is today. So thank you. Eric?
Thank you, Courtney, and most importantly, thank the Downtown Denver Partnership for their tireless work that they do for all of us to build a vibrant city, and for most of all, being home for Denver Startup Week and allowing us to put on this amazing event. Now to help us wrap up these amazing conversations today, Dan's amazing presentation, the governor's awesome remarks, I'm pleased to introduce a leader who brings a national perspective to how important entrepreneurship is. And how entrepreneurship can provide economic prosperity and opportunity to us all. Victor Wang is the founder and CEO of Right to Start, and I had a chance to meet Victor when he was at the Kauffman Foundation in a little unknown organization at the time called Startup America Partnership that was started back in 2012 by the Obama administration to really start to catalyze work across all startup communities in the United States. Victor is a friend to Colorado. He was one of the leaders behind a $400,000 grant to help launch the Commons on Champa at the Kauffman Foundation. But his most important work is here today with Right to Start. Right to Start is an organization dedicated to expanding entrepreneurial opportunity across America. And Victor is an entrepreneur, he's an author, he's an investor, and an economic growth expert. And he'll share his perspective on building inclusive startup communities. Most important, entrepreneurs are the ones that change cities and the ones that change our world. And Victor is going to tell us how these things all come together. So with that, Victor, welcome to the stage.
This is a cool ecosystem. I'm just going to say, I travel a lot. I see a lot of entrepreneurial ecosystems. I meet a lot of startups all over the country. And what you have here, a lot of cities would kill for this. This is a phenomenal community where people work together, they inspire each other, they support each other, and you should be proud of what you've built here. So congratulations on the great work you're doing. I want to talk with you about how it all fits together and what your role is in the whole picture, because I've been a founder, been a venture investor, been involved in entrepreneurial support work, done work in consulting cities and counties and states and even countries on how you build entrepreneurship and innovation. As Eric mentioned, I was at the Kauffman Foundation where we did philanthropic work around entrepreneurship. And so I've seen a lot. And I come from a family of entrepreneurs. And so I know what entrepreneurship means. I know how hard it is. I know how lonely it is. I know it's actually, you put a lot on the line to do it. So I got into this work. I've been doing entrepreneurship related stuff now, including entrepreneurial support work, entrepreneurial ecosystem development for almost 25 years. It's really been my life. And I got into it. My parents actually, I came from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather in Taiwan ran a little retail store selling stuff in a little tiny small town in the south end of Taiwan. And when my parents immigrated to the United States, this was 1970, dating myself a bit, in 1970, they came to pursue their version of the American dream. And so when I was a young man and lucky enough to get into Harvard, they wanted to send me, but they couldn't afford to do so. So one thing, they had to take a second mortgage out on their house. So they put everything they had on the line to send me to college. And the second thing they did was start a business on the side. And so they started it on the weekends and the evenings, like many of you did. And then eventually it grew and eventually paid for college for myself and my sister, built a retirement for themselves. And this happened to have been a software business. So this was in the 90s, and they watched that whole trajectory of the software industry take off. But one of the interesting things that happened is, one, I saw how hard it was on them to build the business, how lonely it was, how difficult it was, the family struggles, the financial issues, all that. It was very personal. The other thing is I saw how it transformed lives. It transformed the lives of my family and the people that were employed by the company. This was also in Austin, Texas, so I saw how it transformed Austin, Texas. Entrepreneurship writ large essentially became a catalyst for the transformation economically of an entire city and a region. But one of the ironies is when I got to Harvard and I studied things like economics and government and how do you build societies to create more prosperity, I found something very unusual, which is they actually don't think about entrepreneurs at all. Like, they don't think about people like my parents, like you. To people that run economies, we're kind of replaceable cogs in the system. Like, if one business shuts down, their assumption is another business will fill its place. If one company lays off a bunch of people, those workers will find other jobs, or new companies will spring up to fill that. And when you're at the ground level in a community such as this, you know that's just not true. The work it takes, the communities it takes, the ecosystems it takes to build stuff, it's so hard. And there's so much friction in that process. You just never quite know how it's going to work out. And so it kind of became my life's work, I think unintentionally, about, well, that can't make sense. It can't be that the way we run a society or a community shouldn't take into account ordinary, everyday people trying to make something of themselves. The little people actually matter, right? The people trying to build something from scratch actually matter. And what I found, and what I think a lot of us feel, is that what we're doing is not just a side issue that's kind of a footnote in an economics textbook, that we are actually at the front lines of building our communities. We're creating better products, we're creating better services, we're creating better jobs, we're making stuff that didn't exist before. And so that power of entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial urge, the dream that there should be something better, is something that's unique to entrepreneurship. And I would dare say that I think we're essential to the way that the economies run and the way societies run. So that's not the conventional wisdom, by the way, in the way that they run cities and states and even countries. Entrepreneurs matter, and the data shows this. So the data that's come out in the last decade, which not a lot of people know this, but you may know this, but if you don't, this is new information for you, which is that entrepreneurs, young businesses, create almost all net job growth in the economy. So older, bigger businesses shed jobs over time. Younger businesses create jobs. Now that seems obvious now when you say it, but people didn't believe it for so long. And in fact, only 18% of voters believe that. We actually took a bipartisan poll about this. And we found that most people don't even think that. They think it's big companies, old companies that create jobs. And so there's a fundamental misunderstanding of where jobs come from. It makes sense because big companies, their job is to maximize profits and cut costs, and they do, and a lot of times that's people. But the new jobs come from new businesses bringing new things to life. So what we need to do is to rethink that, and rethink the role of entrepreneurship and how we think about our well-being. It's not just jobs, by the way, it's also incomes. Entrepreneurs, people who start businesses, make 10% higher lifetime incomes. Now, it's not that way in the beginning. I know a lot of you are thinking, well, I'm not making more now. It's a J-curve. Just like VCs have a J-curve, entrepreneurs have a deep J-curve in their lives. Often very tough J-curves. It builds community wealth. So every 1% increase in entrepreneurial activity in a county correlates to a $500 higher household income in the county average. So there's a huge ripple effect in entrepreneurial activity. And it also helps fight poverty. For every 1% increase in entrepreneurial activity in a state, there's a 2% decrease in the poverty rate in a state. So entrepreneurship has these powerful mechanisms. You, as founders, people starting and building things, are at the very front of that. You feel like you're just building your business, and you are, and there's all kinds of challenges on that, but you're actually part of something much, much bigger, which is you're a part of making things better. The challenge, of course, is that because we have an economic and governance system that tells us, well, you're just a replaceable cog in the system, we have governments that actually think that. Now, you're very lucky here. Governor Polis and some of the things he was talking about are really, truly impressive, and very few states in the country can talk about that. And I know Denver Partnership is here, and they're talking about some phenomenal work they do here as well. But generally, by and large, the issue is ignored. And so a poll we took at the Kauffman Foundation found that 81% of entrepreneurs say that government favors big businesses over them, and 69% of entrepreneurs say government doesn't care about them at all. And we found that 92% of entrepreneurs say that building a business is actually difficult or very difficult, with half of them saying it's very difficult. So we know that the challenges are there. It's always hard to build a business. But I recently took, when I was trying to get a pulse on where the country is, especially on entrepreneurship, so you're catching me at the end of a cross-country road trip. So over the last month and a half, I started in Southern California, where I live now. I moved there a year ago after being in Kansas City for 7 years. And we drove from Southern California up north. I wanted to avoid the heat. So I drove up to Fresno, Sacramento, up through Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, then east, Boise, Idaho, Missoula, Montana, Fargo, North Dakota, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Madison, Wisconsin, Chicago, Illinois, South Bend, Indiana, then up through Detroit, down to Cleveland and Akron, and then up to Erie, and then to Washington, D.C. And I just finished this last week, by the way. So I'm not sure what city I'm in right now. But we finished the trip, And we ended up, we were very lucky because this issue is something that people actually really care about. The SBA administrator, Isabel Guzman, met us, and I brought 10 people from across the road trip that I'd met across the country to join us to meet with the SBA administrator, and she was very gracious in hearing the issues and sharing what she'd been working on. And then we did an event on Capitol Hill where we had members of Congress show up that lead the House Entrepreneurship Caucus, Bill Foster, French Hill, and we did an event there, and then we did a happy hour with 50 members of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in DC, all to celebrate entrepreneurship and lift up this issue. And maybe a lot of people ask me, what did I learn on this road trip? What was the takeaway? And the main takeaway is this, which is when you read the news or you kind of talk, you hear the polls. The polls will say, Americans think this country is in a state of dysfunction and decline. And when you're out there meeting with entrepreneurs in places like this, and I was in 15 cities in 13 states, that is not what you get. It is not at all. In fact, the entrepreneurs are the ones that are out there doing this. They're the ones that are actually making things better. So the big takeaway I got across the country is that America is really ready for this reboot. There's a sense that we can do better than this, folks, like what we've been through, and that entrepreneurs are going to lead the way because entrepreneurs are building the future. It's the nature of entrepreneurs to see what's not there, that it could be better, whether it's a product or a service or something in the community, and they just see it and they think, all right, how do we get there? And that's the nature of entrepreneurship, right? It's the nature of like envisioning a better world. And so that's where we are, which is the voice of the entrepreneur, by and large, is kind of lost in this American civic life, in the American debate. And so the work we're doing here, the stuff we're getting excited about here, we need to speak up. We need to get this voice out there because people want this. Americans want this. So Right to Start, this organization we started 4 years ago, we've been actively out there trying to make this happen, to lift up the voice of the entrepreneur in American life. We've engaged with all 50 states now. We've got a presence in some way or other in 30 states. We've had 15 state legislatures introduce over 40 Right to Start acts. These are bills to make a pro-entrepreneurial environment in states. And so it's been adopted and passed. We've had 5 states implementing it, 2 states with actual legislation that got passed and signed into law by governors. That's in Nevada and Missouri. And then we've had in Kansas, Michigan, and New Mexico where they're doing it in some executive action, where the governor's office of the administration did some version of it. And so then the question is, well, what are we proposing? What are we trying to do? And a lot of the ideas Governor Polis is doing, which is really exciting. But the basic premise is this, which is something that you know, which is that entrepreneurs die deaths of 1,000 cuts. It's not like one thing, right? It's like 1,000 things coming at you all the time, which means as a policy problem, it's actually really hard to tackle because it's everything. It's like a 360-degree problem. When you can't just have, you can't just create one accelerator and be done. You can't just create one venture fund and be done. You can't just create, some program and be done. You've got to look at everything that revolves around entrepreneurship and try to tackle that. And so what we do is we look at all of it and we think, all right, how do you get government to hear the voices of entrepreneurs to look at all these issues, from taxes, cutting red tape, government contracting, opening that up so it's not just big companies that win that all the time, healthcare access, so anyone that leaves a job anytime to start a business can get access. Childcare shouldn't hold you back from starting a business, but I heard stories along this road trip it did. Economic development, we spend $50 billion a year to subsidize big companies to move between borders. Where's the money for homegrown entrepreneurship? Workforce education, K-12 education, capital access, on and on, right? Everything affects entrepreneurs. Even on the road trip, I heard about people talking about home mortgages, bankruptcy laws. All those things affect you. So deaths of 1,000 cuts, the way we do it is by speaking up. And most of the time, and you guys are in the mix of it if you're building a company now, you just don't have time. You don't have time to speak up. And so when you can, there's little ways to do it. And so we ask you to find ways to speak up. At Right to Start, we've got a statement of principles. If you go on our homepage, righttostart.org, at the very top, it says take action. And so you can join us and take action. And that will get you to sign a statement of principles, which basically says entrepreneurship matters to Americans, and we want our leaders to do more. I will do one final thought, and it's just a story I wanted to share about entrepreneurship. which is not, it doesn't seem like it's entrepreneurship, but I'll share it, which is 2 years ago, I took my family to Italy. It was one of those trips postponed by COVID. We all had those, and we did it a couple of years ago. And one of the things I did is we went to see the Statue of David. Now, I'd been there before, but this time, my kids hadn't seen it before. But I had this question of like, why is this statue so famous? Because obviously it's a beautiful statue. If any of you you've seen it before, some of you? It's a beautiful statue. It's magnificent. It's huge, and the detail is magnificent. But there's a lot of huge, beautiful, detailed statues. And why did the city of Florence make this into such a big deal? And the thing about that statue is, if you look at it and you look a little more closely, it's very different than the other David statues that came before it. The city had commissioned multiple David statues because the city of Florence thought of itself as David against Goliath, the little guy against, the system. And the David statue, the other David statues had David victorious, David standing on top of the head of the giant, having won the battle. Essentially, David was already done with the journey. This David statue, the one that Michelangelo did, is very different. If you look, he's still got the stone in his hand. So his right hand, if you look at it, he's holding the stone, and his left hand has the sling. So the guy is about to go into battle. He's actually in the verge of deciding that he's going to go forth and do something. He's going to fix that thing that needed to be fixed, to start that thing that needed to be started. And if you look at his eyes, you realize it's very different than a lot of statues in that he's looking up, like over the ridge, over the hill, like going there, going in that direction. So it's actually a beautiful, magnificent statue because it captures that moment of entrepreneurial energy where someone says, I'm going to go and do that thing that's really hard to do. I'm going to tackle that problem that's really hard to tackle. And you all know that. And the thing is, so much of us do that work and we kind of internalize it. It's so hard. We kind of keep it private. We don't share it. We're kind of embarrassed about it. You want to look tough. You want to look strong to your team, your investors, whatever. But it's something we all go through, and that entrepreneurial urge, that entrepreneurial spirit doesn't get elevated much and doesn't get talked about enough. But it is something we need to talk about. And so one of the things that's become very clear to me in traveling across the country, working with policymakers across the states and in Washington, is they want to hear about that. They want to hear about the struggles, they want to hear about the joys, and they want to know what they can do to help. So thank you for the work you're doing, both for yourself, your business, but also for society at large. I hope you'll get involved, get active, righttostart.org. We'd love to have your help, your support, and your involvement. And congrats on an amazing event and an amazing ecosystem you're building here in Denver. Thank you.
Thank you for giving it up for Victor Wang. Awesome national perspective on all things entrepreneurship. And if you've ever wondered if entrepreneurship matters, clearly it does. And this week is to celebrate that. So we're already 2 days in. We've got another balance of the week, two big tracks of content tomorrow and Thursday in this building and over at the CU Center for Entrepreneurship and at the Capital One Cafe. So lots of awesome things to come. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Dan, and to all our speakers who shared everything with us today. Upcoming events included, if you haven't already signed up, check out the website. Reed Hoffman from LinkedIn is going to be here on Thursday, as is Eric Schmidt, which we're really, really excited about. And founders from Havenly Guild, Ibotta, Quantum Metrics, Techstars, Honor, Suna, and Boom, Supersonic, Wiz, cybersecurity, and many, many more. So lots of things on the schedule. So grab a colleague and experience all things Denver Startup Week. To wrap up here, we're all getting ready to go to the opening party. So those of you who don't know where the opening party is, it's sponsored by Southwest Airlines at the Skyline Beer Garden on the corner of 16th and Arapahoe. It's a newly renovated portion of the park right here in central downtown. As we invigorate all things energy for downtown Denver, we'd love for you to come enjoy the beer, music, headshots, and our friends with Verizon, art by Digirati. It's going to be a lot of fun, and so it's going to be a great way to kick everything off. And before we cut you loose for the opening party, we're going to go through our sponsors one more time. I think we have a sponsor slide. We couldn't thank them enough for all the work. Amazon, the Downtown Denver Partnership, and Capital One Cafe, obviously huge partners and sponsors. Thank you to all of our volunteers who's helped out this week. You've been absolutely amazing. Thank you to our staff and all of our committee members who've put on all the content. We couldn't be more excited. And so with that, it's a wrap here. We had an awesome kickoff session. We've had some amazing entrepreneurs, hopefully, that inspired your journey as you're thinking about what company to start, the company you're building and the entrepreneurial struggles you're going through, or most importantly, you're getting ready to take off in your rocket ship and you need lots of people to work for you. Denver Startup Week is the place to do it. And so have an awesome, awesome week. On behalf of Tammy, Ben, and I, we're really, really excited that you're here. Enjoy all things Denver Startup Week, and we'll see you over at Skyline Park.
Thanks, everyone.